Ethan Collins had never imagined his quiet life would change so suddenly. The young farmer had come to his uncle's forgotten land hoping to build something steady, something peaceful. Most days were filled with the sound of wind scraping across the dry earth, the creak of worn boards, and the lonely rhythm of work. He talked more to the land than to people, and the land rarely answered. Then one late afternoon, as the sun melted into the red horizon, movement near the barn caught his eye. His first thought was animals. His second was thieves, but when he stepped closer, his breath stalled. 3 Apache sisters stood together, silent yet unafraid, like part of the desert itself. They didn't run. They didn't threaten. They only watched him with a guarded strength that made his pulse slow rather than race. The eldest stepped forward, shoulders straight, eyes steady, as if she had practiced bravery her entire life. Her voice trembled only slightly when she spoke. "We never touched a white man before," she said quietly. "Not hateful, not hostile, just honest. We don't want trouble. This land remembers our grandfather. We wanted to see it again." For a moment, everything hung in stillness. History, pain, uncertainty, and the long echo of everything that had ever gone wrong between people, like them and people like him. Ethan saw their exhaustion, the road dust clinging to them, the pride that refused pity. Instead of fear, compassion rose in him. He lowered the rifle, feeling ashamed he'd even lifted it. "You're not trespassing," he said gently. "If this place means something to you, then you're welcome here." Their expressions shifted, just a flicker, but real. Caution softened into something almost like relief. He led them toward the house slowly, making sure they never felt cornered. He offered water first, then food, speaking little, letting them choose silence or speech. He realized this moment wasn't about him being generous. It was about honoring something sacred that lived in the land long before he arrived. The evening light faded, leaving them together in a fragile, unexpected peace. Without planning it, without even understanding how, their lives had already begun to intertwine. The story had only just opened. But the weight of it was already powerful, already alive. The days that followed felt unlike anything Ethan had ever known, as if the silent farm had suddenly begun to breathe. The 3 Apache sisters did not leave after that first uneasy evening. Instead, they lingered with cautious dignity, never acting like guests and never behaving like intruders. They moved with quiet confidence as though the land itself recognized them. Ayana, the eldest, seemed to carry responsibility in every step, always aware, always alert. Tala spoke little but watched everything with thoughtful calm, while young Sani was a storm of curiosity, unable to hide her emotions no matter how hard she tried. Ethan worked as he always did, but working alone felt different than working with them near. He found himself talking more, explaining his tasks, the condition of the soil, his plans for rebuilding the farm. Slowly they began to help, not out of obligation, but because the land mattered to them in a way deeper than ownership could capture. They taught him simple but powerful lessons. When to water, how to read the wind, how to respect the ground rather than fight it. Their hands moved with purpose, and even the earth seemed to respond. What surprised Ethan most was how naturally conversation began to grow out of silence. It started with a few words exchanged out of necessity, then slowly turned into laughter, shared memories, and stories whispered around evening fires. The sisters spoke about their people, about traditions nearly lost, and about the burden of being judged before being known. Ethan didn't try to defend anything. He listened, sometimes painfully aware of history pressing down on them all. When Tala finally explained what they meant the first day, "We never touched a white man before," he understood the depth of fear beneath their courage. They weren't talking about skin or physical contact. They meant trust, vulnerability, the risk of letting someone from a world that had hurt them into their hearts and safety. Ethan didn't try to fix it with big promises. He simply offered presence, kindness, and respect. Day by day, the tension eased. The farm grew warmer. Laughter appeared like small sparks of hope. For the first time in a long while, Ethan didn't feel alone, and the sisters no longer felt invisible. Something delicate yet strong had begun to form among them. Something neither friendship nor obligation could quite describe, but something deeply human and real. News traveled faster than Ethan expected. carried on restless tongues and suspicious minds. Within weeks, the quiet calm they had built began to tremble under the weight of gossip. Riders passed the farm more often now, slowing their horses to stare. Some simply looked curious, but others carried the sharp edge of judgment in their eyes. The land that had felt peaceful began to feel watched. One evening, as dusk deepened and the sky burned with fading colors, two men rode forward and stopped near the gate. Their presence was heavy, their words heavier. They warned him in the tone of men who believed they owned the right to decide who belonged and who didn't. The message was clear. The sisters were not welcome, and danger would follow if they stayed. Ethan stood tall, refusing to bow to their narrow world. But when they left, dust lifting behind their horses, silence settled like a storm waiting to break. Inside, the sisters already knew. They did not need to hear the words to understand the threat. For people like them, danger had always come without permission. They met beneath the evening sky and spoke quietly. Ayana's strength wavered for only a heartbeat before she steadied herself. Tala's calm eyes reflected sadness rather than fear. Young Sani clung to hope, but even she understood what was at stake. They had found peace on this land, warmth, trust, and something close to home. But staying could bring conflict not only to them, but to Ethan as well. They could not let kindness be punished, nor allow blood to stain a place meant for healing. When Ayana told Ethan they would leave, the words cut deeper than any threat. He argued gently, begging them to stay, promising he would stand with them. But this was not about bravery. It was about wisdom, survival, and protecting something far more fragile than land, the trust they had built. He watched as they prepared quietly at dawn, the world still dim and hushed, every small movement filled with unspoken emotion. Sani hugged him with fierce strength. Tala pressed a handmade charm into his palm as a promise that their bond mattered, and Ayana gave him one steady look filled with gratitude and respect. They walked away not as fugitives, not as strangers, but as people forever bound by what they shared. Ethan stood long after they vanished beyond the hills, the farm no longer lonely because it now held memory, dignity, and the enduring echo of trust that would never leave the land.